The United States government is guilty of war crimes, and when they want to attack someone, they create the boogeyman that needs to be attacked so that they can give Americans the pretext of why we have to attack them. At least that's what David Icke says in Alice in Wonderland and the World Trade Center's Disasters, a book that I've been diving into. Let's go beyond Alice in Wonderland to examine the claim that Icke makes that the United States and Great Britain create boogeymen that then the American people insist on being taken out when they are the ones that created them in the first place for their global agenda. Now, before we get started, I want to say for those who served in the military, especially those who maybe served in the Gulf War, which is going to be a large part of today's discussion, I realize that what you're going to hear may be extremely difficult. And if you're a person that believes fundamentally in your heart that people will not murder innocent women and children just for money or political gain, then bless you, because your heart is in the right place. I sincerely dig that you live in a world where you don't believe people are capable of that kind of thing. And so therefore, this is not the episode for you. But if you have questions about whether powerful leaders will actually indiscriminately kill women and children for their own power and political gain, and even lie to people so that they can murder people for their own political gain, that would be what the basis of this particular chapter is. And while I say this particular chapter and you're thinking, wait a minute, is this a book series? Yes. Did I miss a bunch of stuff and I got to start over? No. I'm going to try to make this as independent and self-contained as possible. So if you'd like to see the rest of the book and what is said as we go through Alice in Wonderland and the World Trade Center's disaster, I recommend that you do watch, excuse me, where's this cough coming from? I recommend you do watch the other videos, but it's not necessary. So let's put on screen real quick what we're going to talk about. These videos, by the way, are going to be about an hour long. 45 minutes is what I usually target. So give or take, if it's a short one, it'll be a half hour. If it's long, it'll be an hour. But we're looking at Alice in Wonderland, the World Trade Center's disaster. This is a book from 2002 talking about how September 11th was orchestrated and was a big, gigantic lie. We did not get attacked on that day. We created the attack so that we could have a pretext to go to war. And by the way, I want to say that this case, this argument is way crazier than you could possibly imagine. Crazier than even David Icke's book, which is going to sound a little nuts. And I realize when I read large sections of this upcoming chapter to tell you what Icke's position is, please keep in mind, those are not necessarily my opinions. It's David Icke's argument. And I'm going to do my best to explain to you his argument. If you don't like his argument or don't believe it, that's perfectly fine with me. I don't have a dog in the fight. But I will say that there's things that even David Icke doesn't mention that are crazy. Like, for example, the spinoff of the X-Files, which was called The Lone Gunman, which the first episode of that before September 11th happened was that the government was going to fly planes into the World Trade Centers to start a war in the Middle East. That aired before it actually happened, and it got yanked off of TV. And now you have to dig to prove that that episode did indeed air, where the United States government was going to fly large commercial airliners into the World Trade Centers to start a war in the Middle East. And then it happened. Was that just a crazy, weird conspiracy coincidence? The likes of fucking, I don't know. We've never seen that kind of crazy shit. And people don't talk about it. And that's crazy. And that's just the starter. There's other things that indicate, like books, like the Grand Chessboard, which is a book that writes about how the United States needs to take over the Middle East if we're going to protect our superpower status. And it talked about a lot of the things that are happening even today, such as taking over the Strait of Hormuz, which was an important part of the grand strategy, the Grand Chessboard. We need to control that strait. And now today, the United States, is saying, hey, we're going to take over the strait and call it U.S. property. And of course, it was written in a book a long time ago that was our plan. So when we create the boogeyman and take them out, was it already planned a long time ago? We're going to create a reason to go to war. All right, I'm taking a long time to get at it. Let's get right at the book now because I've taken too long in the intro. We are in the middle of a chapter. And again, you don't need to go back. So please don't feel like you need to stop now because you missed something. We're in the middle of a chapter. We are talking about the Iran-Contra affair a little bit, and then we're going to move into the creation of Saddam Hussein. And that's going to be the bulk of this chapter. We're going to eventually get to the creation of Osama bin Laden as well for the 9/11 thing. But we're going to talk about the first Gulf War. We're going to talk about the creation of Saddam Hussein and whether the United States and Britain and others actually created the boogeyman that they wanted to take out for a pretext to invade the Middle East. Now we're going to end some thoughts on Ollie North in the Iran-Contra affair. And you don't need to know all the details. If you're not political, understand, you can get through this. You can do it. I'll walk you through it, and it won't be super political. But here's the point. The people who got on trial for crimes that Congress charged them with essentially all walked scot-free. Everyone who committed crimes against our country, against our government, walked. And that's the key of this paragraph. That sounds political, but it's more about the they walked part. North, who was up to his eyes in the intrigue of the Iran-Contra affair, faced hearings with other scapegoats and staggeringly emerged in the eyes of many Americans as a hero. Even though he was doing illegal shit against taxpayers in America, he walked away a hero. A lot of people felt he was a hero. Well, how'd that happen? Well, on March 16th, 1988, a federal grand jury indicted North, Poindexter, and others on charges that included conspiracy to defraud the U.S. government. If you defraud the government, you're defrauding taxpayers. You're defrauding everyone in America. So why did nobody care? They viewed him as a hero, and he walked. A year later, despite delays due to legal maneuvering, North was convicted of 3 of the 12 criminal counts that came to court. He was fined $150,000 and given 3-year suspended prison sentence. Like, you're not going to prison. We'll charge you, convict you, make a sentence of 3 years, but you won't actually serve the time. Poindexter, the Reagan-Bush National Security Advisor, who was convicted of 5 counts of deceiving Congress and was jailed for 6 months. Oh, someone went to jail for 6 months. Defrauding the U.S. government, the American people, 6 months. That's the worst that happened. Both convictions would be set aside. Both the convictions were set aside. Oops, you're convicted. The headlines are you got convicted, but we're going to set that aside because it was claimed that their testimony to Congress, for which they were given immunity, you can tell us anything. You've got immunity. So they did so. And then that was unfairly used against them. So they set aside their convictions. But what the big headline, of course, is convicted, they were criminals. But they either served little to no time or it was set aside because they were given immunity in the first place. McFarland, Poindexter's predecessor and National Security Advisor, admitted criminal charges of withholding information from Congress about the covert support for the Contras. He was fined $20,000 and given 2 years of probation. So all these people who rip off taxpayers, use money illegally, guns for drugs, bringing drugs into the United States, put it on this, all the things that Ike said happened was a slap on the wrist. The most that happened is somebody was jailed for 6 months, and then everybody walks scot-free with slaps on the wrist and probation. So that's the hint of that. Now, we're going to get into the uglier part of war. We're going to get into we're going to finish up one more thought. It looks like we're going to finish up one more thought, I think, on Iran-Contra. And then we're going to get into the ugly part of war. And it's going to get ugly. It's going to talk about weapons that are designed to mutilate people and how it was used on women and children. And it sounds like propaganda. In fact, I would ask you to think about this for a minute. And this may be one of the lowest watched videos ever because, again, it's very political and people don't like politics. And so I'm trying to have you hang on because there's some important things in here to consider. When we as a nation want to go after somebody, we will often tell you in the mainstream media about how they are killing women and children indiscriminately. And we will use that as the ploy of they must be stopped. They're killing women and children. Listen next time that you hear us preparing to go to war. The American people will be told they're killing women. They're killing children. This is how we get Americans riled up and insanely angry. It works every time. People don't want to hurt women and children. So do we hurt women and children on purpose and indiscriminately? That's going to be Ike's argument. Let's finish this Iran-Contra thing, and then we'll move to that. The former Defense Secretary Caspar Weinberger, who was indicted in 1992 with others for lying to Congress over Iran-Contra. With the presidency coming to an end, this could have been disastrous for Bush, and he pardoned Weinberger and the others to ensure that there would be no trial. Presidents get to just pardon people. So you commit a crime against America, and then you just get pardoned. Not gonna have a trial. We're not gonna. Not only does the trial allow somebody to get away with it, but it allows all the dirty details from coming out. The pardon came on Christmas Eve, 1992, in the days of his presidency, after he had lost the November election to Bill Clinton. And again, watch, this happens all the time. Presidents love to pardon people when they are out the door. They've lost the election, a new president's coming in, but they're still in power for a while. And that, I would argue, is by design. The outgoing president has some time to do some last minute things like pardoning people that he needs to pardon because of political favors. Hey, I got into office because of you, so you won't be held accountable for any crimes that you do on my last days of office before the new president takes over. I got some more power. I'll pardon everybody I need to. I'll give special jobs, and I'll do all these little things to help the people who helped me get in power on the way out. That's the way the system is designed, according to me and people like Icke. So, and so he had lost the November election to Bill Clinton, and a matter of weeks before Weinberger and company were due to face the trial, they would have been implicated by Bush. But there you go, dismissed, pardoned. Now, I believe we're going to move now into we're going to be moving into the Gulf War. See the Gulf War coming up. We've got this little section to finish our thought. One reporter, Gary Webb, on San Jose Mercury News, did have the guts to expose how the CIA and the Bush-controlled White House had poured crack cocaine into black areas. So look, this made the news that the CIA and the Bush-controlled White House had poured crack cocaine into black areas to raise money for the Contras and destroy the black communities. Simultaneous thing. We're going to destroy black communities, get them hooked on drugs that we sell for guns and ammo and the Iran-Contra. That allegedly is what happened in that scandal, according to Icke. When he did so, Webb and his newspaper were not only attacked by the authorities, but their fellow journalists and major papers like the Washington Post, New York Times, and Los Angeles Times. So look, a reporter uncovered this, talked about how we basically sold guns and drugs for drugs and put the drugs then in black communities to try to get blacks hooked on drugs. And it was a great win for people who want to control. And then it got the newspapers like Washington Post, New York Times, Los Angeles Times that want to report that kind of stuff, they get attacked. In 1986, the United States was convicted. So this is the big one. This is what I led with in the opening thing. The United States is war criminals. In 1986, the United States was convicted by the World Court. There's a World Court that tries governments. And it was convicted in a world court for its crimes against Nicaragua and later faced condemnations for its actions against the people of Panama. And the United States' response, in effect, is piss off. As with all playground bullies, the United States governments, like those in Britain, claim immunity from that which they impose on others. So, the end idea is the United States was convicted in a world court of having committed war crimes, but who's going to hold daddy accountable? No one. No one. So it just gets swept under the rug. Who gives a shit if we're called war criminals? We are the law. You can't arrest us. We are the law. All right, now to the Gulf War. And again, I suspect, unfortunately, this will be not very highly watched. It's so political. And this is probably not my best delivery. So I'll do my best to get you through it if you're interested in this topic. It's got a lot of stuff to think about. Today, we have the Bush family in the White House. So today, as the book was written, we have the Bush family in the White House. Dick Cheney as vice president and Colin Powell as the secretary of state. And a United States international coalition goes to war in the Middle East. So that was the condition that the book was written in. As the book was written, those people were in there, and we have formed a coalition to go to war in the Middle East. Now he flashes back 11 years or whatever to 1991. The Bush family was in the White House. Cheney was the defense secretary. Powell was the head of the U.S. forces as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And the United States International Coalition went to war in the Middle East. So what he's saying is, gee, nothing's changed. The same people that were in charge in 91 and formed a coalition to invade Saddam Hussein are the same people in the office who formed a coalition to invade and go after Osama bin Laden. They created the Boogeyman. That's the whole slide. We created the Boogeyman in the same exact the same exact players who created Saddam Hussein and said the world has to take out Saddam Hussein, he's a madman, is the same people who put together Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden is insane, and we need to take him out. It's the same people, and that should be a giant, is that true? And what do you think about it? Saddam Hussein, so now we're going to talk about that Gulf War, the first Gulf War, right? Saddam Hussein was encouraged by the Americans and the British to go to war with the CIA, British intelligence imposed regime of Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran in 1980. So the argument goes, and this is hard not to make it political, the argument goes is that the United States actually encouraged Saddam Hussein to get into a war with the Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran in 1980. We encouraged it. The war dragged on for 8 years amid appalling suffering and loss of life. But it was good for the oil, banking, and armament cartel, all controlled by the Illuminati. And again, he uses that term loosely to refer to a small group of rulers at the top, royal families, who make all the decisions in banking and world governments. And it was good for their divide and rule conquest. The British government armed both sides in this conflict, and some, but only some, of this scandal surfaced through the Scott inquiry into illegal arms sales to Iraq that was reported in 1996. So the argument goes that he's trying to make, and we're not going to cover all the details because you're going to be as bored as all get out, is that the bankers and governments actually supply guns, arms, and stuff to both sides in a conflict, making money off the sale of those weapons. And here's the thing that not everybody gets. When we sell guns and armaments and missiles and stuff like that to other countries to fight each other, it is always the low end of our stockpile. It's guns and missiles and stuff that we have far surpassed in technology, and we're trying to get rid of our old stock. So what we do is we find a conflict and we sell our old stock. We got a bunch of guns and missiles that are really outdated. We got much better guns and missiles than are in our stockpile. We got to get rid of all this shit. We could just put it in the scrap pile and lose money, or we can sell it to some other country kind of on the down low where Americans don't know about it, and we can fund a war somewhere else with our old technology. Let them blow the shit out of each other. And then when we get people to spun up worldwide that, oh my God, look what's going on with these two factions fighting each other, we got to go in with our way better smart weapons and fucking way better machine guns and way better everything, our way higher technology, and go blow the shit out of them using because they're using our old technology that we are way past. And so that's the argument that a lot of people make. We always love to sell off our old technology when we have long surpassed it, but we got all this surplus of weapons sitting around. So we might as well put it to good use. Sell it to people who can fight each other, and then tell the world that that fight's got to be stopped. And then we come in with our better weapons and blow the shit out of them. And again, I'm trying to portray Icke's argument. Now, Saddam would be used again, knowingly or otherwise, to start another war in the Gulf by invading Kuwait. And again, I was old enough to remember the Kuwait invasion. And I remember when Saddam Hussein was eventually brought to justice for what, and said, held accountable for the invasion of Kuwait. His argument was essentially, and it went under the radar by most people, was, you told me to invade Kuwait. You told me you wouldn't stop me if I invaded Kuwait, that it was none of your business. And so I did so. And now you're saying, oh, what a horrendous thing he did. He invaded Kuwait. You gave me the green light to do so. Now, Icke's going to try to spell that out for you a little bit, how it happened. But I remember that. I remember Saddam's accusing us of telling him he had the green light to invade Kuwait. Could it be possible? Could we tell people, hey, you should go ahead and take care of whatever you need to in your backyard. We'll stand down. And then when they do it, tell the world, oh my God, look what he just did. We got to stop that shit. So, an author and researcher, George C. Andrews, reported this, quote, a little known fact about the Gulf War is that 1 month before our declaration of war on December 15th, 1990, Secretary of State James Baker signed the U.S. Army report for the 356th Second Civilian Affairs Command on the new Kuwait and this is unclassified and therefore available to those interested, according to this. This report described in detail how extensively Kuwait will be destroyed, how the oil wells will be set on fire, and then how it will all be rebuilt better than before with despotism instead of democracy, even more entrenched than it had been before. The report includes a list of U.S. corporations who will be assigned the profitable task of rebuilding Kuwait and extinguishing the oil fires, as well as the Arab names they will be operating under. Exactly the same was done before the war in Afghanistan. So what he's trying to say, and this is the hard part to explain, but I'll try to do my best, is that people say, this is like straight out of the, like the book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. What you do is you arm a bad guy, you tell him to blow the shit out of a country, set all their oil rigs on fire, and then what you say is, hey, that's going to cost a shit ton of money to clean up. Just put those fires out on the oil rigs, rebuild your infrastructure. You need to hire American businesses to come in and really quickly fix all the damage, rebuild your infrastructure, get water and food back to the people so they don't starve. We'll come in as humanitarian aid. We'll rescue you. So our plan is we'll secretly encourage you to have the shit blown out of you. And then we'll tell you that your only solution is to pay our companies, our American companies, to come in and fix the shit. So do we elaborately create a boogeyman to attack somebody else, then go and attack the boogeyman, and even better yet, tell the country that got decimated, hey, we're going to help you out. Hire American companies to come in and fix you up. We'll give you loans. We'll give you really low interest loans to you don't have the money right now to fix it all. That's okay. Use American businesses. We'll fix your shit. Your country will constantly be in debt to us for a debt that you can't repay because you can't pay it. But you know what you've got? You've got women and children starving to death and dying of all kinds of diseases because the water supply has been bombed the hell out of. And you're like, hey, you don't have much choice. You don't have any money. You can't. That's okay. We'll do it because we're just good people. We'll come rebuild your infrastructure. But under the down low, it's like you need to eventually pay us back. We're not doing this for free. Now, we'll try to tell the world that we do things for free because we want to look like the big humanitarians. We're going to help them out. We don't help dick out. We give them low interest loans they can't afford to repay, and then we own their country. And arguably, think tankers say this is how world politics work. This is how globalization works. This is how we conquer nations now. Get two people to fight each other, have them blow the shit out of each other, and then offer loans, and then their countries are indebted to us. The blind trust, by the way, is a farce. And he's talking about how presidents are supposed to, for example, detach their business dealings, the companies they work with. They're supposed to detach themselves from those when they become president. No president is supposed to make money because they're a president of the United States. They're not supposed to make financial gains from being, hey, I'm president, so I'm going to do laws and actions that benefit my business holdings. So they create a blind trust. And this is the blind trust, by the way, is a farce that insists that presidents must hand over all their business dealings to a trust during their term in office. This is supposed to ensure that they can't make political decisions that affect their own investment companies. But that itself, that blind trust, keeping presidents from making personal money from the choices they make on which countries they invade, or what arms or weapons are sold, or what what U.S. companies will come in and rebuild their infrastructure. It's a shell game. It makes Americans think that they're not making profit, but they really are. And that's the gist of what he's saying. Don't fool yourself into thinking that presidents look. You really think this is an example from today? Do you really think? And I know there's a lot of people who do, and I'm just asking you to think otherwise. That somebody who's a rich billionaire is going to set aside making money to just go do the right thing and be president of the United States. That they're willing to just throw away billions of dollars and just set their companies aside and go be president for a while because it's just the right thing to do. Do you really believe that? I would ask you to rethink that. I would ask you to rethink the possibility that you're having the illusion that they're such a good guy that they're setting aside all the money they could be making in private business so that they could just do the right thing for America. And then when they get done, you'll find They profited very, very handsomely from being president. That's usually the argument that gets made. Take a look at what happens when they leave. Anyways, and that's literally the next sentence. Anyway, back to the Gulf War, or Gulf slaughter, as it really was. Now, again, he's going to get really, really, really offensive to those who fought in the Gulf War, who believe that America is great and does things. He's going to basically say, we slaughtered a bunch of sheep herders. It was an unfair fight, and we knew it was an unfair fight, and we killed men, women, and children indiscriminately because we knew they couldn't fight back. We're a monster compared to them. And we knew that. We're the giant bully that blew the shit out of their country because it was good for sales, it was good for bankers, it was good for owning their country. And we don't care how many people die to do so. We want control of the Middle East. We want control of the assets that they hold. And so we do it cleverly. American reconnaissance advised George Bush around July 16th or 17th, 1990, that Iraqi troops were assembling along the border with Kuwait, or so the official story goes. So now this is going to come to the Saddam's claiming we told him it's okay to invade Kuwait. We saw it. Our reconnaissance, our satellites saw troops amassing on the border of Kuwait from Iraq, and we knew, hey, look, Saddam looks like he's preparing to invade Kuwait. We saw it. We knew it was coming, but nothing was done. On July 25th, Saddam Hussein met with the U.S. ambassador in Baghdad, April Gillespie, who told him that she was acting on the instructions of President Bush. She said the Bush government had no opinion on the Arab conflict like your border disagreement with Kuwait. We've got no opinion. You know, we see you amassing troops on the border of Kuwait, but it's not our fucking problem. We don't care what you do. We don't have an interest in the Middle East. My ass. But that's what they told him. America's not interested in what you've got going on, what kind of dispute you have over some borderline between Kuwait and Iraq. If you need to take back some of your border, that's on you. That's in your backyard, not ours. Gillespie added that she had instructions from the president to seek better relations with Iraq. Hey, look, not only will you not care what you do, and if you want to fight it out with Kuwait and take some of your border back, that's not our problem. We want to be your friend. She then left for a summer holiday, another indication to Saddam that the Americans were not interested in the whole thing. Hey, I'm going to come meet with you. Now I'm going on vacation. What happens while I'm on vacation? Not our concern. We don't care what's happening in Iraq and Kuwait. Not our problem. While all of this was going on, Bush still had nothing to say in public about the troop buildups along the Kuwait border. It was being reported by news. CNN was reporting, hey, looks like there's a bunch of troops building up on the border of Kuwait. Are they going to invade? And the president stayed silent, not saying anything. While our ambassador to Iraq said, hey, look, what you guys do over there in the Middle East is not our problem. But by July 31st, perhaps 100,000 troops were involved. Still, Bush was silent. So the buildup just keeps going and going. More and more troops are on the border. You know it's coming. Everybody, and I remember living through this. I'm old enough to remember living through this. I remember hearing the news say, holy shit, like, it looks like an invasion's coming. Now the number is this. Now the number is this. I remember watching that on TV. 2 days before the invasion, John Kelly, an assistant secretary of state, was asked by a congressional hearing if the United States would defend Kuwait in the event of an attack. Hey, look, CNN's reporting, Fox is reporting, whatever. There's all these, I don't think Fox in it up by then? Anyways, CNN's reporting, it looks like Iraq's about to invade Kuwait. If it does, will it destabilize oil prices all over the world? Oh my God, will all of the American oil companies suddenly have a shortage of oil because of the fight going on in the Middle East, and gas prices will have to go up, and all the American oil companies will get filthy rich? Oh, look, that was my own. That wasn't David Icke. That was totally me. When a war breaks out in the Middle East over oil and oil rigs, what's going to happen at home? Oil prices are going to go up. Hey, there's a shortage of oil. You got this whole fight going over there, don't you know? So we're going to have to jack up the prices. And then you'll see all the oil companies will post record profits. Oh, we made more money than we've ever made in our life. Damn shame those guys attacked each other in the Middle East. So When asked if they would defend Kuwait, he replied, "We have no defense treaty with any Gulf country." So that's it. No, we're not going to defend Kuwait. That's what he's saying. We have no defense treaty with anybody in the Middle East, any Gulf country. So the answer is no, we're not going to do anything. Hence, Saddam says, you guys told me you weren't going to do shit. You came over and told me it's not your problem. You publicly stated on TV that you don't have any defense. You don't have a defense agreement to defend Kuwait if we attack. Sounds like we've been given the green light. So on August 2nd, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. The Bush tone began to change. The United States told Saudi Arabians that Saddam was likely to invade their country next. Utter claptrap, according to Icke. And Bush ordered U.S. troops to assemble along the threatened Saudi border. Now, this is important and political a little bit. I'll try to not make it political. The Bushes have long-standing connections to Saudis, allegedly. It comes up again in 9/11. The Bush family and Saudi Arabia, big friends, big money partners. That's been documented by a bunch of people. I can't prove it. I'm just saying that's what I've read. I didn't do it all. I just read people talking about, wow, the Bushes and the Saudis, big thing. So what happens? Saddam Hussein's been given the green light. We won't do shit if you invade Kuwait. Then when he invades Kuwait, we start telling, hey, Saudi Arabia, Saddam's coming for you next. If this is what he's doing in Kuwait, he's coming for you next. So that we put troops assembled in Saudi Arabia to protect our Saudi Arabian oil and business partners. Allegedly. That's what Icke is trying to suggest. The U.S. forces were only there to protect Saudi Arabia, Bush said. And economic sanctions were to be the weapon used against Saddam. So look, we're not going to go fight Saddam. We're not going to blow up Iraq. We're just going to say, hey, maybe you can't import oil or whatever. You can't export oil to the United States. We're going to put sanctions in place. Bad you. You're not going to make as much money, but we're not going to attack you. Bush labeled Saddam then the new Hitler and said that Second World War had shown that appeasement of such people was not the answer. So now we're upping the rhetoric. Hey, we're not going to attack you, Saddam, if you invade Kuwait. But we're going to put some sanction on you. Now we're saying you're Hitler and you're trying to take over the world. He might have added that it also is not the answer to fund both sides in a conflict and to help finance Hitler's war machine, as his father had done. So that's David Icke adding a little aside. Funny, you didn't mention that you're funding Saddam Hussein and that you're providing him weapons to fight this war that now you're saying he's such a bad guy fighting. And he's gonna lay that out some more. Again, I told you this was very political, and it gets more offensive for those who fought in the war. So I apologize again for that. I'm just trying to give you Icke's position for food for thought. On August 23rd, Kissinger's man, Brent Scowcroft, said it all. We believe we are creating the beginning of a new world order out of the collapse of the U.S. Soviet antagonisms. New World Order is a very old code name, according to Icke, for the Illuminati global agenda. The term would be used by Bush in a speech to Congress in September 11th, 1990, 11 years to the day of the September 11th attacks, and enter into political speak around the world to the point of tedium. He described his New World Order as being diverse nations drawn together in a common cause. Lose the newspeak, and this translates as a world government. We want to have a bunch of governments come together under one consolidated leader with a central bank, an army, and a currency controlled by a big brother dictatorship, the very structure that 9/11 brought so much closer. So that, again, is Icke's position. These people have always been wanting to push for a United Nations, a League of Nations, as the first two world wars tried to do. They tried to push for, anytime there's a conflict, we just need to consolidate groups of nations together under one leader. Get all your bank and your currency together under one currency. If we do that, the world will be a safer place. Bush said in the speech to Congress on September 11th, exactly 11 years to the date before 9/11, quote, "Clearly no longer can a dictator count on East-West confrontation to stymie concerted United Nations action against aggression. A new partnership of nations has begun. We stand today at a unique and extraordinary moment. The crisis in the Persian Gulf, as grave as it is, also offers a rare opportunity to move towards a historic period of cooperation. Out of these troubled times, our fifth objective, a new world order, can emerge. So, and people erupted and because long in the upper echelons have they known the plan was for a new world order to get everybody under one world government. And so he says, hey, we can use this new conflict in the Middle East, in the Persian Gulf. We can use this to create the new world order we've all been hoping for someday. All the countries together under one leader, one currency, one bank. We can finally use this event to try to move us in that direction. Father Bush announced on November 8th, 1990, that the forces in Saudi Arabia would now be substantially increased. The defense force, he originally said it was now to switch to offense mode. So, hey, we're just stationing troops over there in case Saddam decides to attack Saudi Arabia. Then it became we're going to prepare to attack Iraq. A week later, Bush left on a tour of Europe and the Middle East, gathering support for an invasion. So he went around, hey, look, somebody needs to do something about the Saddam guy that maybe we created and told, go ahead and invade Kuwait. We don't have a dispute in here, but we're going to use this event now to unite all the nations, come together. We're going to form a coalition. We can use this to further that agenda of one world government. We'll get all the governments to come together and let the United States be the leader. We want to lead a coalition. All you countries coming under our authority. Our president will lead all your countries into war against this guy. We're moving in that direction. A week later, Bush, so we already covered that. He met for 3 hours with the late President Assad of Syria, another tool of the Illuminati, who pledged to increase his contributions to Bush's forces to 20,000 men. The Bush UN forces attacked on Wednesday, January 16th, 1991. And so big, huge headlines. The war in the Gulf splashed all over CNN with big music intros and explosions on TV and fucking James Earl Jones narrating, this is CNN. It was a fucking media spectacle. Look at us bombing the fuck out of this country. Boom, the war has begun. Saving the world in the name of democracy. And it became theater. And even I, at that time being naive, was like, man, this is kind of creepy. Like, we're making this into like reality TV show as we're killing people, blowing people up. And then splashy music intros and James Earl Jones narrating and fucking even then I was like, something feels a little off on this. Part of the propaganda to gain political and public support for the invasion of Iraq was the evidence given to the Senate by a teenage girl that Iraqi soldiers had thrown, that she claimed Iraqi soldiers had thrown Kuwait babies from their incubators and sent the incubators back to Baghdad. Later, it emerged that this teenager was in fact the daughter of the Kuwait ambassador to Washington, and the whole story was a lie cooked up by a public relations firm, Hill and Knowlton. And by the way, I don't want to get into proving it to you. That is something that I looked into back in the day. They used a teenager to say, look at what Saddam does. He takes babies out of incubators and just throws them on the floor. And even then, when I was naive, I thought to myself, really? Like, what is the purpose of that? He's just that evil. He's just that fucking evil. He throws babies on the floor. Turns out it was a media stunt. The teenage girl, it was just a media stunt. There was nothing like that happening. But Americans lost their ever-loving minds. Oh my God, he throws babies on the floor. Kill the motherfucker. We can use this event to move towards a new world order. So again, I can't prove to you, nor do I want to prove to you, it's an argument being made that was a staged media event. There was no real event of Saddam having babies taken out of incubators and thrown on the floor so he can send incubators back to Baghdad. That didn't happen. It was a media stunt, but people bought it. That's the book's allegation, and also what I looked into at the time. I didn't go back and look again. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it didn't happen. Maybe it's full of shit. I don't know. Now let's talk a little bit about how Bush funded Saddam Hussein, and we'll get out of this chapter. The public were also not told, the public was not told that it was the Bush government that had armed and funded the very arm of Saddam Hussein that Father George had now sent U.S. troops to fight. So the Bush family actually funded weapons Saddam Hussein was using in his war against Kuwait and others, and then we're going to go fight him after arming him. Congressman Henry Gonzalez exposed the BNL scandal, that's a banking scandal, in 1991 after he noticed that his little branch of the Italian government bank had loaned Iraq $5 billion. Why are bankers loaning Saddam Hussein and Iraq $5 billion? This money was dispatched to Saddam after November of 1989. When you get $5 billion of influx of money, you're preparing to do something new. So he stocked up a bunch of weapons, allegedly, that he bought from us and others with the loans that we gave him. See how this works? The bankers, if we own the bankers, we loan them money to buy our old weapons and stuff, and then eventually they're going to have to repay that. We'll take it, we'll blow the shit out of their country, and then we'll say, and by the way, you owe us for all the fucking weapons that we loaned you $5 billion to buy of our old stockpile. It's kind of like that. I'm oversimplifying it because it's not as easy to put on paper as all that, but that's the oversimplify how it works. We loan you a bunch of money. You're going to have to repay that money. We know you're going to buy arms with it. We know you're going to invade countries with the money that we loaned you. That $5 billion is a lot of fucking money. We know what you're going to do with it. And so when you do, we'll blow the shit out of you and then say you still owe us the money. So the Bush White House guaranteed bank loans to Iraq if they were to be used for the purchase of U.S. farm products. So on paper, $5 billion was supposed to go for them to buy farm products from the United States. One can argue we knew damn well Saddam wasn't going to use $5 billion on farm products. We knew that, but it looked good for the American people. Hey, look. We're going to loan them money that they're going to use to buy U.S. products. One can argue we knew damn well he wasn't going to do that. He was going to use it for funding a war. But on paper, it can look like this is great for America. Loan him money, and he's going to buy farm gear. If Saddam defaulted, the U.S. taxpayers would pick up the tab for the loan. And since he was always defaulting, it was obviously going to be the outcome from the start. As planned, Saddam Hussein spent the money on arms. So again, the argument is we loaned him money, and if he doesn't pay it back, guess who ultimately pays that? Taxpayers. Oh, shit. We just lost $5 billion on a bad investment. We're going to have to raise taxes from the American people to pay that back because we're in debt now. This asshole didn't pay it back. So our taxes go up in America and we help pay it back. So it's diabolical shit if it was done on purpose. I'm sure it didn't happen that way. But, if it did happen that way, it's very diabolical. And we also knew that he would default on the loan and taxpayers would have to pay more taxes. That's a damn shame. But we also knew that he was going to use that to buy arms and that we would have to go kick the shit out of him after he bought all of our old surplus. That's a damn shame. And then we'd have to kick the shit out of him. That's a damn shame. And then we'd have to take over his country. And that's a damn shame. Although many U.S. Investigators warned Bush that the money was being used to buy arms, the loans were allowed to continue. So there were some people who were like, hey, wait a minute. I don't think Saddam's buying farm equipment. He seems to be buying arms. Keep the money flowing. Keep the money flowing. We promised him loans. The aim was obvious when you look at the other evidence. Bush was doing the same thing his father did with Hitler. He was funding an aggressor so that he could start a war with him. Give him $5 billion. I don't care if he's buying arms. He's buying old, antiquated shit. We'll blow the fuck out of him later. It's all good. Some of the money given to Saddam by Bush was spent on buying poison gas from the CIA in a front that was called Cardian Industries in Chile. Now, again, I'm not going to try to prove it. He's not going to try to prove it in this book. He's got citations for it if you want to look into it. The idea is not only was Saddam buying weapons, he was buying poison gas from the CIA. in a front company. And oh my God, I don't have time or energy to try to explain whether or not something really is a front company or not and what that means. It basically is just a way to disguise who's really selling it. So some company in Chile makes it look like they're a company in Chile, but maybe they're really owned by the CIA. That's a front company. When the war started, Saddam defaulted on his loans, and the U.S. taxpayers footed the bill for Iraq to fight their own sons and daughters. So we give him a big loan. He's kicking the shit out of his own people. He's doing whatever the hell he wants, and we're paying for it. The cover-up of this, as usual, led to the targeting of the small fry. The whole thing was blamed on the bank manager at BNL's Atlanta branch, Christopher Drogel, who could have never sanctioned that sort of money without the highest authorization. So what they're saying is, somebody eventually said, well, who authorizes $5 billion? It's one guy. So fire that guy, make it look like we're doing something. It was all part of the plan, if you listen to Icke's argument. One of the network of Illuminati private armies is called the Wackenhut Corporation. And I remember hearing all about this as well. But again, I don't want to make this super political. An investigative journalist, John Connolly, exposed in Spy Magazine in an article that Wackenhut had been involved in the arming of Iraq before the Gulf War by transporting the means to produce the very chemical weapons that Father Bush and company were saying posed such a threat to the world. Because, yeah, the Bushes made a big deal. He's going to use poisonous gas. At the time, that got Americans super pissed. Oh, my God. Chemical agents? That's an anathema to the American public. We are not going to use chemical agents and suffocate people with gases that make you puke out your guts and whatever. That's the most horrible way to die. It's inhumane. It's okay to blow the piss out of them, but not chemical agents where they puke themselves to death or shit themselves to death. That's just wrong. So Americans really have a problem with chemical weapons, but we knew that he was buying chemical weapons. George Wackenhut, that's the argument. George Wackenhut, a former FBI operative, started the company with other FBI associates in 1954, and its board had been packed over the years with recruits from the FBI, CIA, and the military. It has since merged with Group 4 Falk, the world's second largest provider of security services. George Wackenhut is a longtime friend of Father Bush and has contributed generously to his political campaigns. John Connolly wrote that. And I realize that's a lot of shit. And can you prove it? Look, you see what you want to see. Somebody will counter this and say, that's all bullshit. You're really reaching for straws here. And that's fine. I'm not here to defend both sides. I'm trying to show you Icke's position and ask you to consider for a moment if 9/11 could have been fabricated because we wanted to invade the Middle East. Just consider for a moment that's all you're asked. I don't care if you come away believing that's what happened. This is a study in, did it happen that way? And here's the best argument, or a really good argument for it. John Connolly wrote in this Spy magazine, after a 6-month investigation in the course of which we spoke to more than 300 people, we believe we know that the Wackenhut truck did contain equipment necessary for the manufacturing of chemical weapons and where it was headed in the winter of 1990 to Saddam Hussein's Iraq. And the Wackenhut Corporation, a publicly traded company with strong ties to the CIA and federal contracts worth $200 million a year, was making sure Saddam would be getting the equipment intact. So Spy Magazine says, look, I've tracked this down. Wackenhut is funded by the CIA, and they're selling Saddam Hussein chemical weapons. It's one guy. Is he right? Or did he get fired? Whatever the case may be, he did say it. So take it with a grain of salt. We got about 10 minutes left to see how far we can get into this. U.S. District Judge Marvin Shube said the claim that the Atlantic branch of BNL could loan $5 billion to Iraq without the approval of the head office in Rome could only come out of Never Never Land. There's no way one little branch manager loaned $5 billion to Iraq, is what he's saying. The judge said that manager Drugel and 4 other employees at the branch, quote, were pawns or bit players in a far larger and wider ranging sophisticated conspiracy that involved BNL, Rome, and possibly large American and foreign corporations and the governments of the United States, England, Italy, and Iraq. Smoke is coming out of every window. I have to conclude the building's on fire. So look, other people are starting to notice this looks like we funded this guy. Governments are funding this guy. This is the last thing Father Bush administration and the Illuminati wanted to hear. Judge Shube was then removed from the case and replaced by Judge Ernest Tidwell, who refused to allow any evidence to be presented about the CIA and Bush White House involvement in the bank. So a judge says, holy shit, there's indications U.S. companies and the Bush family are supplying arms to Iraq. And so they fire that judge. They put somebody else in place, and that judge does not allow anyone to bring in any kind of evidence that the Bushes are tied to the $5 billion loan to the bank. If you follow that at all, again, you don't need to know all the details. There are books written about it, I'm sure, bigger books that are written about it, I'm sure. Drugel was persuaded to plead guilty, even though he wasn't. So the guy that made the little bank manager, he pled guilty to making a bad loan of $5 billion. The funding of the Iraq arms buildup before the Gulf War involved the Bush administration, the British government, the Italian government, the Soviet Union, and other leading governments controlled by the Illuminati. And that is, again, Icke's claim. Let's push. This is going to get into some creepy moments in the war, and we'll end on that food for thought in a really bad place, so bear with it. Home of the brave. It is appropriate to focus on the Gulf War before we proceed to 9/11. And the war on terrorism. So we need to focus on the Gulf War before we get to the premise of the whole book, which is 9/11 and its war on terrorism. For these are mirrors of each other. What happened in the Gulf War is the same thing that happened in 9/11. So you need to look at both. That's what he's saying. Same people, same agenda, same methods, same mass slaughter of the innocent. Remember, it was the same Bushes and Cheneys and Powells and stuff like that were in place during the Gulf War that kind of are the same people in place during September 11th attack. And they're using the same methods of doing their work. Firstly, as with Afghanistan, when we invaded Afghanistan after September 11th, the Gulf War wasn't exactly a war. My understanding of a war is that you need two sides. And under that definition, the Gulf War was not a war. It was a military equivalent of putting Mike Tyson in the ring with your grandmother, your granny. It was an unfair fight. There's no two sides. It's one side beating the piss out of somebody else. American soldiers, he claims, have described this war as a turkey shoot, which is precisely what it was. The Iraq army, mainly conscripts, who had no choice because their leader told them to do it. They have no choice. They're just doing what they're told. They don't have a lot of options. May have been armed by the U.S. and Britain, but it was still like trying to stop an elephant with a pop gun. Because again, we supply them with old technology and then we blow the shit out of them with our latest technology. Iraqi men and women and children were subjected to the most intense bombing blitz in human history. Hundreds of thousands died in the bombardment, while the media were showing us pictures provided by the US military of smart bombs that could target a building and go through a toilet window. The truth that was being suppressed daily by the military censors was very different. At least 93% of the bombs that rained from Iraq skies were not smart, and that's according to the Pentagon's own numbers. 70% of them missed their targets. That's according to the Pentagon's own number. So we're trying to tell you, hey, look, when we attack a country full of a bunch of civilians, we're really, really good. We've got smart weapons. We can shoot a missile into somebody's fucking window in their bathroom and kill them on the toilet. We're really good. But 93% of the bombs that rained on Iraq were not smart bombs that could do that. And 70% of them missed their target. Wade Frazier, his excellent study of the Gulf War, reveals the background to just one of the devices used against the Iraqi people. And again, before we read some of these gruesome details, keep in mind, if your government said some other government did these things, would you be furious? Yes. But when your government's the one that's doing it, we tend to go, I don't know. But we would be easy. I would argue we would be easy to spin up if you told people this is what the bad guy's doing to his people. You'd be like, oh my God, stop that. But if we do it, we're like, maybe it's not so bad. Maybe you're over dramatizing it. So let's just hear the argument. He talks now about the fuel air bombs. The fuel air bomb that we use works thus. There are two detonations. The first spreads a fine mist of fuel into the air, turning the area about the size of a football field into an explosive mix of vast proportion. Then a second detonation ignites the mixture, causing an awesome explosion. The explosion is about the most powerful convention explosion that we know of as of the time of this writing. At a pressure shock of 200 pounds per square inch, people in its detonation zone are often killed by the sheer compression of air around them. Human beings can typically withstand about 40 psi of shock. This delivers 200 psi of shock. The bomb sucks oxygen out of the air and can apparently even suck the lungs out of people through their mouths who are unfortunate enough to be within the detonation zone. Literally, just when that explosion happens, it sucks all the air out of the thing and can, according to this writer, can literally suck your lungs right out of your body when that compression happens of all the air. Our military used it on helpless people in the 1999 Gulf slaughter. Now that's the part that gets controversial. Every armed country claims the other country kills women and children and innocent people. That's how you get your people angry to go do something about it. So they said the same thing about us. Americans are killing innocent people. They're sucking the lungs out of women and children in their air fuel bombs they're dropping indiscriminately on people. And we would say they do the same thing if we wanted to make people mad at their people. So the reality is, are the weapons being used or not? I don't give a shit who's spinning the story. Does the weapon do that? And did we use it? That's the question. These were the same weapons used in Afghanistan. The Iraqi people, living, breathing human beings like you and me, were also subjected to a lovely piece of hardware called the Big Blue, which produces a shock wave only eclipsed by nuclear weapons. As Wade Frazier points out, the power of the shock wave can turn a body into hamburger. So-called bouncing bombs were also deployed. These were designed to bounce to waist height before exploding and ensure a better chance of splattering people into thousands of pieces. These are called anti-personnel weapons. And in the sanitized newspeak of the Illuminati frontman, hey, look, we're using anti-personnel weapons, which means how to blow people up. Then there was and is the Beehive, which explodes 8,800 pieces of razor-sharp shrapnel in all directions, cutting through human bodies like a proverbial knife through butter. All these weapons were used against civilian men and women and children in the Gulf War and all the others since, including the war on terrorism. In an oh-so-rare excursion into reality by the media, John Belzer of the Los Angeles Times reported in 1991 on the fate of Iraqi conscripts, people forced to fight for Saddam Hussein. He saw night vision gun sights footage from the briefing room, and he says, quote, "They looked like ghostly sheep flushed from a pen. Iraqi infantrymen, bewildered and terrified, jarred from their sleep and fleeing their bunkers in a hellish fire. One by one, they were cut down by attackers that they could not see or understand because we're using infrared technology, goggles, heat-seeking missiles, shit that they're like in the Stone Age. It's like they're throwing rocks at us and we're using night vision goggles. They can't even see. They run out in the dark, and we're like, I see every single one of you motherfuckers that got these great technology on. It was fucking shooting fish in a barrel. One by one, they were cut down by attackers they couldn't see or understand. Some were blown into bits by bursts of 30-millimeter exploding cannon shells. One man dropped, writhed on the ground, then struggled to his feet. Another burst of fire tore him apart. Even hardened soldiers hold their breath as the Iraqi soldiers, as big as football players on a television screen, run with nowhere to hide. These are not bridges exploding or airplane hangars. These are men. So the point being is that oftentimes you want to say, hey, look, we minimized casualties. We went after a bridge nobody was really on, and we blew the bridge up so that you can't keep moving. That's what we always tell people. Hey, we blew a bridge up. We blew an airport up or an airstrip that had nobody in it. We always want to tell you that there was hard to look. We maybe one or two people were there that shouldn't have been there, but really it was a bridge that wasn't occupied at the time when we hit it. It was an airstrip that was kind of old and abandoned, only used for military purposes. We always tell you nobody was really around when we hit something. The same reporter wrote, the mechanics of death and destruction are a grim affair. The military's scientific approach and its philosophies, for example, is the preference for wounding vital organs over blowing limbs off. Can be deeply disquieting to anyone who imagines such matters are left to chance. Many people would rather not know the gruesome details. And now we're at an hour, and so I think we've got a lot left to cover. Yeah, we've got a lot left to cover. Really, really big topics. And so I'm going to pause here because I want you to, if you look, no one is going to want to sit through this episode. I really don't. I really don't feel so. But if you did, please let me know. If you're willing to hear more gruesome details, we'll talk about the highway of death, where they blew up a convoy in the front and back and then slaughtered everybody in the line. And it was maybe a war crime. But I just feel like this is a really heavy, heavy topic, and a lot of people won't want to hear it. So I'm going to sit there and I'm going to sit with this as well. Do I continue to read all the death and destruction and the allegations of war crime so that we can get to better stuff later? Or will I lose everybody who's watching this series because I'm not going to sit through 2-3 more episodes of that shit? Let me know what you think. Have a great day.